what, 3 months into the job? How's that been?
It's quite right, I have to say. Crypto markets are really getting a big push, especially from the institutional side. And we see a lot of players coming into that market. And actually for us as a derivatives player, that's very interesting. And being in Asia is very interesting too, because this is naturally where most of the developments are coming from. So it's awesome so far.
And your key priorities right now for the business itself?
I think we are just on the brink of the next maturation step for the crypto markets. And the next big thing to come is derivatives markets. So for us, getting a good relationship with the regulators and getting into a more regulated and licensed regime is the biggest, let's say, obstacle that we have to take.
Yeah, we were just having a conversation just before this interview started, just on, just how volatile, Bitcoin is, for example, and other coins. And I would imagine before you get massive corporate adoption, and you and I were having a conversation before the show, that needs to be addressed. So in terms of new products, what sort of furthers that goal for you?
I think that we need more, let's say, mass market, like plain vanilla products that we can use on the mass market for retail and institutional players. But I think what also is needed is stability from a regulatory framework. A lot of regulators are already working on this. And I think this is important to give confidence into the market that the products have a pretty environment and sound basis. And this will then also support the confidence into the product. Some of the products will be volatile still. And for this, I think also we need what is widely discussed, the central bank digital currencies as stable coins to support that development.
Are those competition, since you brought it up? I mean, we had big news overnight from the PBOC, digital yuan, for example. Do you see that as competition, or is that something that sort of furthers your goal?
I think it's more supporting the goal and further.
In what way?
Yes, it is supporting as we see more products and classical institutional players coming into the market, and this supports the wider acceptance of the products with more classical players into coming that. And so from my point of view, it has a long-lasting positive impact, and more regulators will look into these products and warm up to that one. So I don't see it as a negative or competition effect at all.
Does it necessarily, not so much the digital versions of fiat currencies themselves, but more crypto, does that latter part need to fall under eventually, you think, central banks, or is the allure and the value of using these mainly because they are outside the purview of monetary policies makers?
It is, the question is how you want to tackle that one. I think that for the beginning, we will see more centralized approaches before we really have, let's say, open markets. I think that central banks will play a major role in definition, especially for stable coins, central bank digital currencies. But I think also that we see a lot of positive effects of coming from this more public approach to cryptocurrencies. So it's very hard at this point in time to see, and you see the DeFi space, which is also developing quite fastly in this direction. So it's quite hard at this point in time to see how the developments are going.
And I would imagine part of what you guys are looking at too, apart from growing organically, things like acquisitions, for example. I know you can't comment specifically on what targets you might have already, but give us a little bit of a clue. What types of assets would fit your strategy?
I think when you look at the development of the crypto market, you see that a lot of these players starting a couple of years back about the market infrastructure, they are now expanding into brokerages, especially custody, to serve wider client aspects. And I think this is something that we from BitMEX will have also look into and see how we can support our clients in the full approach of products offered to the markets. And so from our point of view, this is something that we definitely look at. And yes, at this point in time, you have to see which markets do you tackle with which approach and see whether there are interesting players for partnering or maybe for expanding organically or inorganically.
And from a client perspective, what percentage of your clients are actually corporates more than, say, I don't want to use retail investors, but more the institutional type, of course, the one that you think is going to lead us into this sort of next phase?
It's a little bit hard to say at this point in time because we don't have this clear client definition from a regulatory standpoint.
Okay.
But the products that we are offering right now are pretty sophisticated products. So we are more targeting right now the professional or semi-professional traders. I think we need to expand that product universe also to more plain vanilla products to increase the customer base and bring new customers and clients to our platform. Now, for the institutional side, naturally, these sophisticated products are very interesting.
I know you can't comment specifically, but I guess a lot of people are wondering right now that you and I are talking, of course, and they hear BitMEX, of course, Arthur Hayes, we know him. I've interviewed him a couple of times. I know you can't comment specifically on the case. I need to ask you, though, what was the biggest fallout from what's happened late last year and, of course, them leaving, and how are you addressing that fallout?
Now, as you said, I naturally can and will comment on anything related to what happened there, but I think that the most, let's say, impacting thing is the uncertainty that normally goes around this. And now bringing this confidence back that BitMEX is here to stay. I mean, we were the inventor of the perpetual swap, the most traded derivatives product in the crypto space. And this power we will use again to rise with new products, with a new offering in more markets.
KYC, money laundering, the case aside, that's going to be the core issue really of regulators when you have that conversation. I used to work at a bank. It was probably 80-90% of what bankers did.
Yeah.
Do you have an AML policy, for example, and how do you assure KYC all throughout the process?
Yes, we have a KYC and AML process in place, and we are the largest exchange with a fully KYC'd and AML customer base. So we implemented that early on, and I think it's also a very important part for the approach of the regulators. Our regulators are not regulating technology, they're regulating function, and as long as you fulfill a certain function, you need to have the processes in place. So for us, it's very important to get into the regulated space as we see this as the next step for maturity. And so we're reaching already out to several regulators globally to see how we can offer our products in these markets on a standardized basis.
Final question. It's interesting that a guy like yourself with your type of background, of course, a classic exchange guy, is heading this sort of endeavor. And the reason I bring that up, a short distance from where we are right now is the world's most valuable exchange. I'm talking about the HKX. Now, in your view, the future of crypto and all the derivatives, of course, is it inevitable that you will see an overlap, mergers, and how would you approach that, for example?
I think there will be a lot of interest from classical players into the new, let's say, quote-unquote, digital world and crypto custody world, crypto world. Yes, and maybe a couple of years back, they might have thought about acquiring one of these exchanges or new coming up exchanges, as you see from, let's say, some of the developments in the US, that maybe the values of the new players might even surpass the ones of the classical ones.
Right.
But as you see now that more and more markets are developing, you will see also a couple of years down the road a consolidation effect. So how we see and approach that, naturally reaching out, having discussions around that, and see how and when there are opportunities for collaboration and partnerings.
Very quickly, have you been approached?
I won't comment on that.
All right, okay.